If you're still watching, we're nearly there, but we have one final Star Wars film to get through. We wrap up the original Star Wars trilogy next.
Here we go again.
As always, we begin with the intention and obstacle. Unlike its predecessor, Return of the Jedi focuses on the light side of the Force, so a lot of this preparation work is the opposite from the previous story. With that in mind, Luke's intention in Return of the Jedi is to turn his father from the dark side, and the obstacle stopping Luke from achieving this is the Emperor is goading him into killing his father. Will Luke be able to save his father from the dark side when he's being led into killing him? As I said in the last section, the stakes are the same across both films, but are reversed as the focus changes. Last time the external stakes were to get Luke to join the dark side, this time it's to get Vader to leave the dark side. This is a direct link to the philosophical stakes of the story, which relate to not giving in to hatred and pushing against the temptations of the dark side. This also affects the internal stakes, as these call back to Luke's anger management, as previously mentioned in episode 5. We need to work out what the key beats are. Our opening starts with Vader landing on the new Death Star. He informs the commander that the Emperor is coming on board to oversee the final stages of the construction. Refer to our index card sheet in the link below to see why this is an important mention. Next, Luke arriving at Jabba's palace is the inciting incident. It's where we get our first introduction to the new Jedi Knight that Luke is and see his powers in action. After Luke sees Yoda die, he speaks to Ben about his father and his connection to the Force. This is where Luke discovers Leia is his sister and is told to bury the feelings he has for her, as they'll be exploited by the Emperor. It presents Luke's secondary goal of being able to control his feelings. It also introduces the internal stakes of the story. The external stakes are also established, as this is where Luke says that he's felt the good within Vader. The midpoint provides a stake setback, as Luke says he's leaving Endor to confront Vader. This will put Luke in front of the Emperor, who is manipulating events to expose Luke's anger, an internal setback, but also Vader's resistance to admitting there's still good in him, external setback. The second act goal is resolved when Luke goes to kill the Emperor. It provides an internal and philosophical failure, as Luke wasn't able to control his feelings and looks certain to give in to his hatred. Finally, the climax of the story resolves the overarching goal when Vader kills the Emperor to save Luke and the galaxy from the Empire. It marks a successful reversal of stakes across the board, as Luke brought Vader back from the dark side, Luke was able to control his feelings, and he didn't give in to hate. So after Vader lands on the new Death Star, we see R2 and 3PO arrive at Jabba's palace, delivering a message and a gift. During Luke's message, he gives R2 and 3PO to Jabba as gifts. During some entertainment, one of Jabba's prisoners tries to escape, and they're sent to the Rancor pit. This is when Chewbacca is brought in by a bounty hunter. The bounty hunter then reveals themselves to be Leia after she rescues Han from the Carbonite. They're caught trying to escape, and Han is thrown in prison whilst Leia is made to be one of Jabba's personal prisoners. This then prompts Luke to arrive at Jabba's palace. He ends up in the Rancor pit, where he kills the Rancor before being sentenced to death in the desert. Whilst they're on their way to the Sarlacc pit, Luke tells Han he has everything covered. After some help from R2 and Lando, Luke and the gang are able to escape from Jabba's barge. The gang splits up with Luke heading to Dagobah. Back on the new Death Star, the Emperor mentions to Vader that Luke will seek him out due to his compassion. Luke then sees Yoda moments before Yoda's death. The philosophical stakes are established by Yoda in this scene, as he mentions to Luke about not going down the dark path. Yoda's death prompts Luke to question whether or not to carry on before speaking to Ben and pushing us into the second act. In the first half of the second act, the Rebel Alliance devise a plan to destroy the second Death Star. Once the plan has been finalised, the gang set off to land on Endor, which is where the Emperor tells Vader to send the Imperial fleet. Whilst the gang are about to land on Endor, Luke and Vader are aware of each other's presence. Once they've landed on Endor, they deal with some forest troopers before having to go out and look for Leia after they get separated. Leia is taken to the Ewok village after saving Wicket. Vader is told by the Emperor to wait on the moon of Endor for Luke. While searching for Leia, the gang are ambushed by Ewoks and taken back to their village as prisoner, whilst 3PO is treated as a god. Luke uses his Jedi trick to get the gang released before being accepted into the Ewok tribe. This is where Luke tells Leia he's leaving to confront Vader and brings us to our midpoint. The second half of the second act starts with Luke turning himself into Vader. There's a threat to the external stakes, as Vader denies a conflict of emotions within him. We then see the gang planning on how to gain access to the shield generator, and the Rebel Alliance jump into hyperspace. Once the gang gain entrance to the shield generator, Luke is told the Rebel Alliance is walking straight into a trap of the Emperor's making. This is an internal threat, as Luke is now being made aware that all his friends are about to be killed. The gang are then captured in the shield generator, and the Rebel Alliance then fall into the trap. The Ewoks help fight back on Endor until the Rebel Alliance see the Death Star is operational. Han and Leia are trying to gain access into the shield generator. Luke then goes to kill the Emperor. It's a philosophical threat, as Luke is given into hatred, and it's also an internal failure, as his feelings and emotions have been manipulated. We begin the third act with more fighting on Endor, but the tide is turning in favour of the Rebel Alliance. After some sparring, Luke refuses to fight and tells Vader he senses the conflict. Vader tells Luke that there is no conflict, giving us an external failure. Back down on Endor, Han blows the shield generator, allowing the Rebel Alliance a chance to attack the Death Star. Whilst hiding from Vader, Luke's feelings for Leia betray him. Vader mentions turning Leia to the dark side in Luke's stead. Luke lashes out and chops off Vader's hand. This is a philosophical failure, as Luke allowed himself to give in to hatred. Luke sees his father's robotic arm and refuses to kill Vader. This provides an internal and philosophical reversal, as Luke would rather die than be turned to the dark side. This prompts the Emperor to try and kill Luke before Vader steps in and saves Luke. After killing the Emperor, the Rebel Alliance continues to fight. In an attempt to save Vader, Luke drags Vader on board his ship. This is where Vader mentions that Luke had already saved him. It marks a reversal in the external stakes, as Luke was able to bring his father back from the dark side. The Death Star is then destroyed, and there are celebrations across the galaxy over the fall of the Empire.